preparing the live stream. And we are live.
All right. Good evening. Today is Wednesday, September 9th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as stated, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. Since we are on Zoom tonight and you can see all of our faces, I suppose we should still do roll call. Although all of our names are there anyway. It's just been our practice. So Carmen, do you want to do the roll call, please?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Carol Abraham.
Here.
Lisa Anderson.
Here.
Mary Pat Brugge.
Here.
Corey Nochika.
Here.
Alexandra Philbin.
Here.
William Orricchio.
Here.
Lori Ryan.
Here.
Thank you. Are there any items anybody would like pulled from the consent agenda this evening? All right, so can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
And a second, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, so that brings us to the items removed from the consent agenda. We do not have any donations tonight, so we are on to the superintendent's report next.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our meeting. This is a really exciting and stressful time in our school year. Tomorrow we begin remote instruction for our students. Last month, the Board of Education adopted the recommendation to phase in the beginning of school for all 2,400 plus students. The phase-in model meant that we would start with a significant amount of training over 4 superintendent's conference days that concluded today. The phase-in model also includes a significant amount of time, 1 week and 2 days starting tomorrow, for half days of remote instruction for all students, while schools invite children in a rotating basis for orientation activities. Meet the Teacher is happening tomorrow, and other important activities so kids can get into school, can get into the classroom and meet their teachers. Starting the week of September 21st, we will be remote. We will remain remote, but those will be full days. That's where students will go through their bell schedule, basically, and help kick us off to September 29th, which is a Tuesday, where we will start our in-school and hybrid model. It's important to underscore that while we made the very difficult decision to phase in our approach during this very unique time and what will be a very unique school year, our neighboring districts and districts within our region and even statewide have also followed suit. I think there's an appreciation throughout our region that we wanted to make sure we had ample time with our staff to prepare them for what will be a much different year, whether that was staff development, which we'll talk about a little bit later, or that was making sure our systems and protocols were ready, making sure that we have been able to remove classroom furniture to achieve social distancing. There were a whole plethora of issues that helped us recommend this phased-in approach, because this school year will start unlike any other. So we want to thank the community for appreciating the fact that this is different. Hopefully this is the only school year in our foreseeable future that will begin this way. What it also does, and maybe this is an unintended benefit, is it gives us opportunities to learn from others. Usually when we open the school year, we can do it very smoothly, very quickly. We can do it, as I joke, with half our brain tied behind our back, because that's what we do. It's a predictable event. It's planned for. We're able to dot all of our I's and cross all our T's and work out all the kinks because we've done it for decades. But What we're also making sure we do is that we learn from our colleagues. We've had a series of issues throughout our region where schools opened and staff or some students tested positive, and schools had to work with the health department, and there were positive experiences or not so positive experiences with that. We have a district in our region where the health department demanded that a very significant portion of their transportation department quarantine because of exposure to the virus. We've had schools that opened up and quickly had to move to a remote model because there was damage in their school district affecting their Wi-Fi and their ability to deliver their systems within the school day. So there is nothing normal about opening school this year, and that's just a fact. The reality is we're trying to do the best we can, and we're trying to make decisions with health and safety standards in mind. We would not make any decision that would put a staff member or a student at risk. And we didn't make any decisions that we felt that our staff couldn't implement, or decisions that would hurt kids. The reality is there are many, many moving parts. We are opening schools in a pandemic, and the rules change quite often. We received some rule changes over the last couple weeks that now sanitizer can be used on a school bus, that the deadline for transportation for out-of-district students has been extended. We're receiving new guidance every day, whether it's from the CDC or Department of Health. We just received guidance that the state is going to pilot this year language around snow days, that school districts can use a remote learning day as opposed to an emergency snow day. So every day, if not throughout the day, we receive new guidance. We received information, the governor gave a press conference earlier this week, and of course the details came after, that the school district has to submit to the Department of Health on a daily basis the number of students and staff that test positive. He's calling it a COVID dashboard. That created some angst and anxiety in the community because the county health department has been very, very clear for months that school districts are not required to test, and in fact, school districts don't have ample staff and resources to test. So this plane is being built as we fly it, and there are many mechanics who are assisting us, not just our school folks, but agencies throughout the state. And when we look around and we try to find best practices in how to open a school during a pandemic, there aren't any because we're not sure what worked. And in a normal situation, we know what works because we've done it for a really long time and we've made adjustments. Over that time. So, we can't stress and impress upon enough of our faculty and our staff and our students, and particularly our parents, that this is going to be different. We are going to miss some things, and we're going to try to correct them as quickly as possible without impacting programs and without impacting students. But this is an opening unlike any other. And we're going to be learning a lot with you along the way, and we hope that you stick with us, because we appreciate the fact that kids need to be in school, and we hope that they're in school for a good long time. But we also know that at a moment's notice, we're likely to receive a phone call directing schools or the district to close because the virus is coming back. The governor has made that very, very clear. We can look very locally in terms of colleges and universities and spikes and different things that are happening on college campuses, forcing them to close or quarantine. So it's a matter of how we respond, and we hope that the systems we put in place and that phasing into the school year will allow us to make sure that their systems work, and that we can communicate with people very quickly and swiftly and within a moment's notice. With that said, I'd like to turn it over to our team to talk about school preparedness. I know the facilities committee just had a meeting, so they may get into more specifics later, but Anthony Merlini is with us, and I'd like him to comment on just school readiness from a facility standpoint. I know over the last week since his commentary at our last board meeting, he spent a lot of time on the ground in the schools, walking the buildings, meeting with the principals, meeting with safety team members from each of our 5 schools. So I'd like him to give a brief update, and then we'll turn it over to other members of our team.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, like Joe said, over the last couple of weeks, I've been meeting with the building principals. I've been answering their questions and meeting with some of their staff and walking their buildings. There's been concern raised as to for the construction, what are we doing here? What are we doing there? They've been asking about, preparation of the buildings. They've been asking about the systems inside the buildings, how they're functioning, if everything's up to par, and what are our expectations going forward. In all the meetings that I've had, it's been pretty positive in meeting with the staff. I answered all their questions. They seem to be pretty responsive to what I've been saying. Now it's just a matter of them going back to the rest of their staffs inside their buildings and bringing that information to them, which could bring more questions, and then we'll answer them as we go along. But we discussed what we're doing for PPE. We discussed what we're doing for signage. We discussed what we're doing in terms of ventilation systems, the improvements that we've been making to the schools with the bond and the construction. When I met with some individuals today and we walked the buildings at the high school, they were impressed with how much, improvement has been made over the last week. Last week, when they were inside the high school, they saw a lot of construction debris, a lot of things going on, and had a lot of questions as to how we're coming back. And today, when they walked through, they were amazed at how much the building got cleaned up, how much improvement's been going along. So all those little things, I think, help with alleviating some of their concerns and some of their questions as going along, as it does with many other individuals, throughout the facility. So it's been pretty positive, and gained some traction. So, Joe, you have any specific questions or anything?
I don't know if Carol, if you want to have the board ask Anthony, and then we can.
Yeah, why don't we go around the board table here? I guess we'll go in alphabetical order so that we can do this in an orderly fashion, which means Lisa, you're first. You have to unmute.
Yeah, sorry, pressing the wrong button. Still getting used to that. So Anthony, one thing I was wondering if you could address is just some of the recent changes, or how how the construction has been progressing. You said that it seems that there's people have noticed a world of difference between a week ago and today. I mean, how confident do you feel that we'll be ready for school opening when the students are ready to come in there?
Well, based on my walkthroughs, and I'm going to do, I'll consecutively do more walkthroughs over the next couple of days and next week. What I've been seeing is, the fit and finishes. We have the vestibules and the main offices in the elementary schools and even the Blue Mountain Middle School have all come together. We have the carpets are in, the walls are painted, the ceiling tiles are in, the lighting's all addressed, and now it's just a matter of getting the rest of the materials back in there so we can get the staff in there as well. So we have IT that has to go back. We have telephones that need to go back in there to get those people and individuals situated to hit the ground running. The contractors are cleaning their own spaces as they go along. So my guys don't have to necessarily go in there and clean, but we have to get in all the other stuff that, helps them do their daily functions on a daily basis. But in terms of the spaces, we've seen a lot of, they've been tiling, they've been carpeting, they've been painting. They've been, really putting a great effort forward to try to get our schools ready so we can jump back in. So I'm pretty impressed with what they've been doing. There are still, things that are going to need to be addressed. And like I said, there's always little punch list items that, touch ups here and there. And, once we start moving things into the spaces, we might nick a wall or something like that, and we'll have to touch those areas up as we go along.
Thank you. And I was also just wondering if you could talk about the ventilation. I know that's been a great concern of many parents. You've talked about it before, but maybe just a little bit. I know we were in our meeting earlier today, you mentioned the Unit Ventilators, I think they're called, in each classroom, and the kind of maybe just a little bit about how that works and what their purposes are, and that they're in all the classrooms right now, so everybody has one.
Sure. So, one of the parts of the project was, at Furnace Woods, we're actually installing new unit ventilators. The old Nesbitt units in there were out past their useful life. So part of this last bond was part and parcel was to replace all those units. So they have a good portion of those in. I think we still have some little connections to make here and there and some adjustments to make there here and there. But the way the filtration basically works in the building is, you know, the unit ventilators are bringing in outside air into the classrooms, and on a cold day they temper them. On a warmer day they just bring air in for the space as per recommendations of SED and code, where occupants of a space need a certain amount of CFM into that space. And then we have an exhaust system that brings the air back out of those systems, out of those classrooms or offices. So we have the circulating bunch of airflow that's coming in and going out. We've been checking and maintaining those in all the buildings. My staff, my maintenance guys have been going through to make sure that they're functioning properly. Some of the newer systems are going to be commissioned over the next week or so. So I haven't necessarily turned them on to see how they're functioning, but they will be turned on over the next week to get those things purged and running and work out all the little kinks if there are any.
Thank you.
Okay, Mary Pat, you're next.
No, I'm actually good. I've pretty much been following the process, and I don't have any specific questions in terms of, yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm sure everything's changed. You know, what you originally had planned, it all, you know, shifted because, you know, ventilators that you had originally planned, you have to get different ones now. And, you know, and the filters all have to be different and everything has to be so much more built up. Is there anything that you do have any concerns about not being done on time, whether it's, you know, just within the buildings or anything? I mean, is there anything where you anticipate where there's going to need to be continuing on or while the kids are in school?
Well, we won't do any, well, I can't say, well, we're not going to be doing any major construction while kids are in school. Once kids are in school, basically if we have to do anything, it'll be done on nights and weekends. There are a couple of, you know, areas that'll be open, and we've mentioned a couple of them before. We have the auditoriums where the specialty items that need to go into the auditoriums, they're long lead items. When we talk about the main entrances on these buildings where we're having a new secure vestibule entrance, the storefronts that have to go in there, they're long lead items, and there was some issue with the design development of those and the contract and the construction of those because of COVID. So it's delayed the process a little bit. So I feel confident that we'll get the buildings open and we'll get the building safe and secure, but there's still going to be these lingering items out there that we're going to have to button up along the way. They won't compromise what we're doing, but they're still going to be out there.
What's the time frame you anticipate? I mean, assuming, what's the time frame? Assuming that even if the kids get back to school at some point in a month, that then they have to go to nights and weekends. What's the time frame? Christmas, you know, the holidays, or do you anticipate it faster than that?
It depends on what we're talking about. So there's some things that are coming in towards the end of this month, beginning of October, things that are coming in the middle of October. And then there's some other items that I was discussing with Mr. Catalan earlier, like some doors, exterior doors. And the way we'll approach them is one for one. When the door comes in, we'll remove the door, put the new door in. This way, we're not leaving that entrance or exit way in a lurch. We're doing it, you know, one for one, so we can get the system ready back together again, the building back together, so that it's safe and secure for the following time when students come. So if you did it on a Friday or overnight, it'd be ready the next day. But they're all different times, so it's kind of hard to answer that.
I just didn't know if, like, again, if, you know, when you foresaw, you know, just sort of, you know, basically be so, you know, having nothing but, you know, basically punch list type of things,
Right.
but having the major stuff done. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm actually going to break order a little bit. Lori, you can go next.
I just had to shush my son for a second. Sorry about that. So Bill and Lisa and I were just in the facilities meeting with Anthony and Enrique. So the original question was, are we going to be ready for opening and what are the safety features? And then another question should be, how are we doing on all the rest of the stuff? So Anthony was very good, and Enrique was explaining to us, very good at explaining to us at what point we are with all of the building stuff, where we're not complete yet, but everything is coming along. So as far as being safe to open, something as easy as the tape going down the hallway. So Anthony said as soon as the guys are cleaning, they're not going to put the tape down right away until we're expecting kids in there, because like he said, the men are all working, and men, whoever's working, and they clean up after themselves. So all the signage, right? I hope I'm answering this question correctly, because we want to talk about safety for when the kids get there, right? So all the signage will be up after they're cleaned up, and we're definitely sure that the kids are going to be in the building. We also talked about, even though all the front, I guess you're calling it front doors or whatever, but all the front places will also have an egress, like at Blue Mountain. Was that the one, Anthony, that still
Furnace
has the
Woods.
door out? Oh, Furnace Woods.
Furnace Woods, we took the whole front of the, basically the front of the building off on where the main entrance is. And one of my requests, and also the construction manager and the architect, was to still have a doorway there so that we have a means of egress from the front of the building. And it's primarily going to use for egress to get into the building, enter the building. We're going to come around the left-hand side or the right-hand side of the building. But we'll have fencing to come and direct individuals to come out of that door and up onto the sidewalk in a safe manner.
Right. So I just wanted to, I asked Carol if I can go next, because I'm just thinking of things. So I just wanted to make these are like two different questions. How we're doing on all of our projects, and they're all coming along very nicely. I mean, with everything that's going on, unfortunately, it's not completely finished, but everything that's going on is going to be done away from the kids, cleaned up before the kids get there, and teachers, etc. All the safety issues for when the kids come in will be done before the kids come in, including the egress and the signage and everything that it needs, and everything that's been purchased. A whole lot's been purchased, according to Anthony too, like all the PPE for the teachers and the staff, and the cleaning products and the hand sanitizer and what have you. So I'm hoping we are in good shape for when the kids come back into the school. That's it.
I'm going to just do a quick piggyback on Lori's question, or redirect, or whatever you want to call it. As far as the safety goes, there are a lot of punch list items. Is the asbestos abatement done? Because that's a very, important one in a lot of parents' minds, of course, and it should be. We want to make sure that there isn't any asbestos around when the kids and the teachers are in the building. Are all of those parts done?
Yeah, we wouldn't remove any asbestos. We wouldn't remove any asbestos when individuals are in the building. Like children. Everything that's done is, overseen by a third party. They have a third party come in, monitor the air, check everything to make sure the contractor is following the letter of the law and doing what he's supposed to be doing. So typically we do it on when we were even when we're doing this construction project, we try to do it on nights or weekends when the contractors weren't even in the building, regular contractors, to try to stay away from everybody. It just makes it easier. It's, we don't have people tripping over each other. In the last phase of what we were doing removal in the auditorium, and that phase is now complete.
All right, thank you. I know that was weighing heavily on some parents' minds.
Wait, Carol, one more thing. Ant, did you tell them, I know some people were concerned, Bill had brought it up before, about our nice statues at
Thank you. The light. So
people were asking what that was.
And that was brought up regarding the fixtures that are outside the building at Frank G. Lindsay. Over the last several years that I've been here, and you don't really notice it until you're here late at night, but the street lighting at Frank G. Lindsay, there was really no street lighting at Frank G. Lindsay. Most of the lighting was done off the side of the building. So the building lights were used to light up the parking lot in front of the building. So one of the requests that was made, and one of the things that was noted on our building condition survey, was to add street lighting. Well, when we had this opportunity to add street lighting at Frank G. Lindsay, one of the things that I've seen a lot, and they're in hospitals now, there's several other school districts using them, and what they are, it's a self-contained system. It's a solar powered and windmill powered street light. It's an LED light, They're standalone. They get installed. They function on their own. Some will talk to the other lights. So if there's 6 lights there, there may be one that communicates to the second one in a way of they have like a computer inside of them. So those LED lights are now for our streets. They're functioning as we speak. They have the ability to come on when we want. They have the ability to turn off when we want. They can dim if we want. So at night, if we'd like to dim them a little bit more than full power, we can change the lumens in them to go to like almost like I call it like a night light feature. So you still have lighting, but it's not overpowering. And we can also use them for our STEM. If one of the teachers at the high school decides that they want to, bring the students around and tap into them for STEM, STEAM, whatever, they have that ability as well. So it could be a teaching tool, somewhere in the future. But it dovetails into, our energy and how we've always been here at Hendrick Hudson. We pursue doing solar power on top of our rooftops. We've always been interested in pursuing LED lighting and trying to be the most energy conservative as we possibly can. And this to me was just another one of those features that I thought would, come into that mission of the Hendrick Hudson School District to try to save where we can. So it's one of the deciding factors. When you talk about cost of installation, they're self-sustained. They don't need power coming from the building. So we didn't have to trench. We didn't have to bring in another electric service from the building, another control panel coming over to the lighting, and then trench from all the different 6 lights and tear up the roadway. They're all on their own. So it was another, thing that we looked at for saving some money and, in the future, saving on our electric bill.
That's great. Thank you. Sounds like I could use one for my driveway. All right. I think Corey was next, unless Bill wants to go next since he's also on facilities. Doesn't matter. Okay, Corey, you're next.
So my question, and Anthony, might not be for you, might be for Laura, and maybe a different time. It's about technology infrastructure. So we're going to have a lot of people streaming video, a lot of teachers streaming video. They're probably going to be students. Have we load tested the entire network to make sure that we have enough bandwidth and enough backup connectivity? In other words, that we have some sort of redundancy, not just to one internet provider, but maybe a second for all the schools in the event that one fails?
I think that's more towards Laura.
Yeah.
But I know one of the things we did to try to hedge our bet was at the high school where we do bring in connectivity is now we have 2 different connections coming in from 2 different locations. And the rationale behind that was, so if you were reading about the news and what happened to a local school district, they lost their connectivity at the high school because a tree fell down, I believe, or something of that nature, and knocked out their connection to one of their buildings. So one of the things that we did, because we don't want to lose our connection, is we have 2 sources coming into the building for that. But in terms of bandwidth and things like that, I think that's more directed towards Laura.
Okay. Is it 2 different providers, 2 different sources, or is it just 2
same
lines?
Provider.
From the
Same provider.
Okay. So if that provider goes down.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. About a year ago, we put I think that, right, Anthony, we did the redundant network for that reason, as Anthony just explained, because all of the schools are all connected. And then we originally thought we were going to be okay with a 1 gig bandwidth, but actually I just signed the paperwork today to increase us to 2 gig. As we start to realize how much, just Google Meets are going to take up, we wanted to make sure we had that extra capacity. And again, in my conversation with some other districts, we've been kind of comparing, usage and what they've been using, what we've been using. And so I feel pretty comfortable with the 2 gig. And I've also made arrangements that if we needed to increase, if we find that is still not enough, I mean, we were 500 megabytes last year. So we're increasing quite a bunch. But if we need to increase it even more so, it'll be, a matter of hours to do so.
Has it been tested? And the reason I ask that is you could have 10 gigabits of bandwidth from your provider, But if your network doesn't support more than 1 gigabit of throughput, you're not going to get that. So it's like a funnel, right? If we don't test the entire network, it could be a concern.
The test will happen when
It will
teachers
happen soon.
are all in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can only go
Today.
based on our experience and what we know everything runs off of. And again, I actually did speak to some colleagues that were able to test. And so that's where we've been making some of our decisions, and, most recently made that decision to jump from 1 to 2 gig. And again, the biggest thing I wanted to make sure was that if we needed to increase, it wasn't going to be, weeks of waiting. So I'm trying to be conservative with it. I think 2 gigs, I'm pretty confident, because I thought 1 gig would be enough. And I think going 2 gigs is going to give us a lot more security. But if we need to, I've already talked to Best Web about increasing it even more if we need to.
Yeah, I'm just asking about the infrastructure itself, because if the switches don't support 2 gig, it doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
You're paying for 2 gig, and right. So you gotta have some pretty powerful switches to support.
Best Web actually has to come in next week to actually swap out some equipment to support the increase. Yeah.
Great. Good to hear. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Corey, thank you very much. Bill, you're next.
I think we've covered a lot of, our current situation. Anthony, this is more of a global, what we were talking about, a lot of these improvements over the summer, part of a bond project, I believe, from a bond of a couple of years ago that also included the track and field. So this is just one phase of that bond. Is this the final phase, or are there more phases after this?
This is the final phase.
Okay.
We actually, when we were supposed to do the security phase last summer, and then this was supposed to be the secondary phase. But because of bidding and cost and constraints like that, we wound up pushing it off and doing everything in one bid. So this should be it.
Till our next bond. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Alex, do you have any questions? Then
No, my only concerns were about safety, and all those questions have been asked and answered. So thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
all right, thank you. Anybody have any last minute questions? Anybody want a second go round?
I'll just mention that last week, our last meeting, we had a statement from various representatives of the teachers union asking about ventilation and other upgrades. Those questions have been answered, or those statements have been remedied. Earlier today, we posted a facility-specific FAQ on our website, and it's time-stamped in terms of when information was presented or edited. So I know there were some questions or some thinking that some of the content in the letter that was read last week went unanswered, but that letter has been addressed with the FAQ that we posted, and certainly through ongoing dialogue that Anthony shared today.
Okay, thank you. Joe, who's up next?
Let's go to Enrique, who has been getting ready with purchase orders and making sure all of our supplies and equipment are in, and has been working with transportation and food service to make sure we're ready to go. So Enrique, we'll hear from you in terms of an update.
Thank you, everyone. The summer has been busy. We've been adding a lot of expenses to all COVID-related issues to be sure that we're safe. So in that sense, we're running a little bit over budget in some of the accounts. I'm hoping that in the future, there's going to be some savings in other accounts. But I spoke with Joe, and we're going to have to monitor the budget a lot closer and a lot faster than in prior years. Last year, we were very lucky because we didn't have to make major expenses on COVID, and yet we had a lot of savings from not having the kids in school. But this year it's a little bit different. But we feel confident that, if we have to do any adjustments, we'll be able to do them. Also, so you all know, over the last 3 weeks, we closed 2 important financings. We did a bond anticipation note for 3 months for $18.5 million for the capital project. We were going to issue a long-term bond, but unfortunately S&P and Moody's, both of the credit rating companies, did not want to issue a report until they don't talk to me, come and see my financials, look at the financials of the district because of Indian Point. So I'm going to start working with them. So by October, November, we can raise a long-term bond. And actually tomorrow we are closing on close to $1 million bond anticipation note for deposits like we do every year. I'm very glad to say that basically it's free money, because we're a municipality and people don't have to pay taxes on the interest. We're borrowing at 0.6%, 0.4%. I mean, it's been amazing. So and by the way, in 2 weeks, we are starting our audit, because if you remember, it was supposed to be in August, but that's when we had the hurricane and we had to reschedule, and that will happen in 2 weeks. Thank you. Any questions?
Do you want to just raise? Yeah, thanks.
If the audit is going to be starting in 2 weeks, refresh our memories, when are we supposed to report to the state, or has that been pushed out?
The state is being very flexible this year because of COVID, but we're going to be late, no question about it. We're starting in 2 weeks. By the time I review it, we agree on everything, we start the ST3, it won't be before mid-October, and we are supposed to have the ST3 ready by late September. But I already sent an email to SED letting them know that between the hurricane and COVID and our capital projects were delayed, and they have no problem.
Okay, great that you've been proactive. Thank you, Enrique.
Yeah. By the way, also, I forgot to say that probably some of you saw that the state is cutting state aid between 20% and 2% depending on the school, because revenues to the state came much lower than they anticipated. Fortunately for us, it was only 2% reduction in our state aid. So we were lucky because some people were at 20%. I was talking to my friend in Brewster, that is also a high need district. They were cut 20%.
That's unfortunate, to say the least, but I'm glad ours is only 2%.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you want me to go around the room, or you want to just raise hands if you have questions? Corey says no. Lisa says no. Alex?
It might be for Laura too, but it's about staffing. A few weeks ago, you and Laura talked about some staffing. We might be facing some problems there. And I just wanted to know if we've been able to identify all the staff we need, including nurses, for the school year.
Actually, I don't know. I didn't see the last minute, the board agenda, but thankfully this afternoon I spoke to civil service, and I think we were able to appoint the nurse. I mean, that just happened at 5 this afternoon, that they They sign it and they send me an email saying you can appoint the nurse. So now we're full with the nurses.
And today I was able to work, or actually this week, with the high school assistant principal, Mr. Katsaris, and 3 of the school nurses to find 2 more nurses, one for the high school and one for our 6th nurse that we have that rotates through all 5 buildings. So they are hopefully starting next week, so we can get them starting. They will actually be through BOCES at this point, and we can hire them through BOCES eventually. Usually there's a separation contract fee, but I was able to negotiate that out. So if these are people that work out for us, we can actually hire them to put them as permanent RNs. So the high school is filled, and so is the 6th nurse that we have roaming.
Great, thank you.
And if I may, Carol, just real quick, Lisa, that's a good segue to some new nursing positions that we created to deal with potentially students or staff that are ill. Could you just give a brief refresher on the CNA position?
So one of the regulations or expectations from the DOH is to have an isolation room. And our nurses can't be in the isolation room and deal with students that have boo-boos or need beds or diabetics. So, you know, K to 5, we will have 3 different CNAs that will assist in our isolation rooms. We'll have 1 in the middle school and 1 in the high school. So their job will be to stay with the students that are ill, monitor them. They work directly under the nurse. They as well are coming through BOCES. They will start on the 21st, so they get used to our buildings, they get used to the students, they get used to what the procedures and protocols are. Our nurses are actually creating protocol. They're almost through it. Each building has a protocol. It's a K-12 protocol in case anybody has to be moved last minute if we're short. So everybody knows the protocol if a staff is ill, if a student is ill, and what the procedures are. So each building was able to find an isolation room. I was finally able to confirm that with BB today, because that was my concern. There wasn't an isolation room for the kids. But we were very successful in finding 5 CNAs, and we're excited to move forward.
Great. So we have 6 nurses and 5 CNAs.
And this, we had 6 nurses last year because we have a high population of diabetic students. And there were several in certain buildings. Like one building had absolutely none, but all the other buildings had several. So if a nurse called out sick, finding a substitute is very difficult. So we take the 6th nurse and they go from building to building each day of the week. And when they do that, they're getting used to the kids in the building. They're getting used to the parents are used to them. And if a nurse is out, that person then subs and we don't have to worry about finding a substitute. So people would get phone calls. Hi, the nurse isn't in today. Are you going to monitor your child from home? Or are you going to keep your child home? And we didn't want that. We wanted our children to be able to come to school every day.
That's fantastic, by the way.
Thank you. It's something that we worked hard at. And finding nurses right now, if you don't know this, is very, very difficult. I was fortunate enough that I know somebody that knows somebody, and one of the schools is an opening. I said, well, how about I take them? So we had 4 interviews, and out of the 4, we loved them all. We picked our top 2, and we were very fortunate that they accepted the position. So
after
one is a forensics nurse too, so that's exciting. I'm sorry?
After many offers were made. So nurses were, we had a lot of interview committees occurring with nurses and the high school administration and Lisa. And I offered many positions to nurses over the past weeks and months.
I think it's been 4 or 6 we've done.
Yeah, and they were then turned down. Nursing seems to be a position right now that is in high demand, and most of them chose to go elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Not to schools, to hospitals, other settings where maybe salary was a little bit different.
They can write their own contracts now. They're called COVID contracts in the hospital. And they can really write their own salaries. So coming to a school was a shock for some of them.
And then Alex, you asked about just staffing in general. We've been able to work really closely, Margaret and Lisa and I, when we talk about teachers, with the principals, and we were able to, I think, strategically place teachers in appropriate positions. We have some people that are taking leaves, and you'll see those on agendas. A lot of sometimes people take leaves and then they change their leave request, update it, add it. We have people who take intermittent leave because you're only under FMLEA for childcare leave and EPSLA, you're only allotted the days that your child does not go to school due to COVID. So you then need to take it intermittently. So that means, if your child's school is closed 2 days a week, you can get leave on those 2 days, but you're supposed to report to work on the other 3 days. So it's quite a debacle on the back end that we are managing. Enrique has been trying to help Debbie DeCiccio in payroll and trying to identify the days, because these teachers or teaching assistants or any staff get paid a certain amount per day if they are out on one of these leaves. So we are trying to just make sure that we have all of our records in line and we can identify who gets paid on which day and at which rate. And you'll see on the personnel agendas leaves last week, this week, and you'll probably see more at the next board meeting as well, as we just continue to revise and tweak them based on people's requests. But we did have, we have some new hires that you can see on the agenda tonight. We have some resignations and we also have hires, and Lisa was really amazing. We had a resignation of a speech teacher, and we also have a hire tonight. So that was really good, quick movement on Lisa's part. And so we're working to try to fill any vacancies that we have as soon as possible.
Thanks. I just had one more question about the K-5 teachers. Talking with my friends that still have elementary students, it sounds like there's a lot of new names. And so how were you guys able to manage the online classrooms and keeping capacity down in the classrooms without hiring a whole lot of new staff?
Do you want to cover that, Margaret, maybe?
Sure. So one of the things we first did when we agreed on the elementary model with the 3 elementary principals was look to our reading and math teachers, all of whom were former classroom teachers. And although they had not been in the classroom in a bit, they were our first choice. Our second option would have been teaching assistants who have teacher certification. The third option would have been to try to find teachers. Finding teachers is a little bit like finding nurses, maybe a little bit easier, but nonetheless highly competitive right now. So we are very fortunate that we have been able to, I would say, substantially cover the additional sections we had to create in order to keep the live teaching classrooms at 15 children each. I think we hired from the outside 3 people. Am I right, Laura? 3 new. And they're not really new. They were known to us. 2 of them were teaching assistants for us in a prior school year. So they are comfortable with the building, somewhat familiar with the curriculum, will be highly supported by their current colleagues. And I think we are, we have 1 or 2 teachers at the elementary division that will start the year on a leave. And even those placements have been covered by folks that we are very happy to have in the buildings and have been serving in other capacities for us. So the elementary classrooms are ready to go, and they've been doing a tremendous amount of PD these past 4 days. That will continue until we have students full-time in person. And I think we all feel good, and I would include the 3 principals in that, about how we have staffed the 3 elementary schools. Absolutely.
We're very lucky. Oh, sorry, Laura.
I was just going to say, we're still looking for permanent building subs. We did lose some this year, and some of them have become teachers. So we are looking for more permanent building subs, because we do not feel comfortable having subs coming from different districts the way we normally would. So we want to make sure that we have a solid staff. So we posted for those positions. We're looking for them. We're interviewing them. We have 1 that's being appointed this evening, but we want to look for more. So I'm just saying that publicly. We're looking for, certified teachers who want to get experience and be permanent building subs. So we have them in each building because they're really key. And if we have people that call out, those are who we want filling those classes. We often use our teaching assistants and they get approved to be substitutes as well, and they get paid a differential for the day. But we don't like to pull them too much because they're teaching assistants for a reason. They have a spot where they need to be. So, but those are things that we've been trying to fill as well.
And Alex, if I may, and then Lisa, I'll let you weigh in. I think it's important to underscore the timeline here. When the state came out with its guidance about return to school, it was unclear at best in terms of whether or not a school district had to provide a full, complete remote option in addition to the other plans we had to submit. And it wasn't until August 7th when the governor said schools are opening and parents, you need a remote option. If you want a remote option, you can have one. So from August 7th until the 24th, I'm just looking at my timeline here, we put together a process for parents to identify that they're interested in remote learning. We asked them to commit for a full semester because of exactly this issue of staffing. We've capped class sizes in school in elementary based on physical layout of those classrooms. We're mandating mask wearing, 6 feet social distancing. Kids are going to be spread out. It's not going to look like any classroom we've ever embraced here at Hendrick Hudson before. So that was a deadline on August 24th for families to commit. As we were building the schedule, as the 3 schools were building the schedule, there were parents who, oh, I didn't mean to fill that out, or I wasn't quite sure. So there was a day or two of jostling back and forth, which leads you to, basically now, early September, last week and early this week, of finally getting a confirmation of who's in for in-school and who is out for remote. And if we didn't have those mileposts or some of those decisions and try to use different teachers that we had, we would be, our budget would be over. We just heard Enrique talk about he's getting nervous. Our budget would be over by $2 million in elementary staffing alone at the end of the year, because what we've been asked to do is to create literally 2 schools, a school for kids to come to physically and an entire school model with complete staffing for kids to stay home. So that led to some delays in terms of getting the word out and finalizing class lists. We still have families who are registering, families who are moving in. There are a lot of homes for sale. There are a lot of homes under contract and a lot of homes that are closing. And we're at a point, to be blunt, we're at a point where families are moving into a particular school neighborhood, and those children will not be able to join that neighborhood school classroom because they're already at capacity with the social distancing guidelines that we have to follow. So we're having conversations with new families saying you can start remote, and here's what it would look like, or you can go to a different elementary school where there is space because we're capped. It's a hard cap. It's not squeeze in a desk or, we're going to exceed the class size guidelines or policies. It's a hard measured cap. So it's one of those, consequences of learning the system as you build it, because never before has public education been demanded to offer so many options within the public school setting. The same goes for the middle school and high school. The middle school and high school asked for their deadline to be extended to, I believe it was August 31st, so there could be more communication from the schools to families so they could understand what that model is and what it looks like. And so there's still some moving back and forth, but it's a little different at the middle and high school. But there were a lot of moving parts with those schedules too, in terms of last minute staffing resignations, or as Laura mentioned, folks who are going out on leave. That's an annual occurrence, but this year those schedules coming out much closer to the first day of school was because we wanted to provide parents more time to make this decision. So again, sort of a domino unintended consequence of trying to provide more time for families to learn and make an important decision on their children's schooling created smaller window from when schedules went out to the first day of school. So it's one of those situations where we feel we're doing the right thing, and in the moment you don't understand what the other dominoes could be, and those are a couple of them.
I was going to say that we were very fortunate that we have duly certified special ed teachers, and we worked with parents to talk about programs, and we really changed some of our special ed programs this year and utilized staff in a different manner. So I think that has also helped us. And to Joe's point, I had 7 new families to register today, and to find the place where we could put them in a program that was appropriate was a long discussion and making sure we had the space for them. So that is an example of just how we're being creative and putting kids in placements that are appropriate, but also where we have space.
So we had 7 new families with special education children register this week?
Today.
Today.
Yeah. Well, I got them today, but I will tell you probably this week I've had 10 to 15.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I see Lori
Thank you.
saying
Thank you
wow
all for all
also.
your work.
All right, I'm not really sure where we are in the progress here because we're doing a round robin. So Joe, where are we going next?
Okay, let me go back to Lisa. Lisa gave some updates, but I want her to sort of wrap up PPS, and then we'll go to Laura and Margaret. But we had some exciting presentations today with Psychological First Aid. One of the partners that we've worked with has agreed to work with our staff and provide this parent training. So there was a conversation at 6 p.m., which is why we delayed the start of our board meeting, and one earlier today. So Lisa, if you could just give a quick overview on why this was an important conversation, in particular for families.
I've learned that we all need to be very calm. That's all we need to do is be calm and everything will be okay. No, we had Dr. B, I call her Dr. Lauren, but she presented for families today at 11 and again at 6 tonight. Total, we had 50 people attend, which I'm happy with. I wish it was more. But she really talked about the strategies and how we can get our kids to be calm and some ABCs we can do at home. And just, we all have ambiguous loss is what she keeps saying. And it's true. We don't know what we've lost, but we know we've lost something. And how do we handle that? And how do we work with that within our schools, especially as our kids are coming back? So she's done that presentation twice today for families. She's already done the presentation for K-5 staff. Next week is 6 to 12 staff will be presented to. But also we have, each one of our buildings has an SEL team, and they've done 2 days of PD. Today was the first time that I had free time that I could actually sit and watch. I got day 2 of the presentation. And I have to say, I'm not an emotional person, but when they got to the end, I was crying because the stuff that they were talking about and listening and seeing the teachers' comments really were like, we're all in this together. You know, I laughed at that when I first heard it, but the teachers were like, so how do we identify kids and how do we make sure we know that we get these kids to you? And when will you look at these referral forms? And it really made me reflect on how much this team put into it, of the referral form from step A to step B to step C to the last step of, and how we make sure we get the outside services or services within the building. So I think that, you know, yes, academics are important. Yes, academics should come, but before you can get to the academics, you have to deal with that social emotional piece. And I think our team did just such an amazing job. And I am so proud of the teams at every level. They made the presentation theirs. I've only heard positive things from it. And I'm so proud of everything that they were able to convey to the staff and share with the staff and listen. The staff felt heard from what I can see in the presentations, as well as they know there's something in place and there's more to come. It's not a one and done. They will be presenting as we go through the school year. So I think that's the most exciting thing that I got to do today. I mean, I was on the phone. We have done many parent meetings. We have done many back to school meetings, getting ready for kindergartners, getting ready. This is a new venture for everybody. We have 4, 5, 6 new tuition students this year, maybe 5. And out of them, all of them are virtual. So these are brand new kids coming to us and we don't know them. So we're getting to learn them. 3 of them are kindergartners. So we're learning those steps. So we've done a lot of prepping with our teachers, with our remote special ed teacher that we were able to use this summer for special ed. So I feel really comfortable with her. I just think it's a lot of time and effort spending with the teachers and really listening to what they need and how we can provide it for them. It's interesting to get an email saying, hey, can you help me find hearing impaired masks? I'm like, what does that mean, a hearing impaired mask? But they're asking for a clear mask. So I'm like, I don't really know what that means. Are you asking for a clear mask so someone can read my lips? So all of that is what we're going through right now. And these are the last steps, because we do bring back our 1211 and ABC kids on the 21st. They will be in school every day for half a day that week. We need to get them set up in their routines again and how to transition back to school. And it allows us to do it without all the other kids in the building. So if we do have some little meltdowns or we're not able to get through our morning, we have some buffers because there's no other kids in the building. So I think doing that is going to be the best thing that we've ever done for our kids on this return. Remote is very difficult for them, and the sooner we can get them in school, the better. I think that's everything. I'm sure there's more, but I don't want to take up too much time.
Questions? Well, Lisa, I think you wowed everybody. It sounds like you guys are doing great. Lisa and Anderson and I were able to participate in the psych first aid today. So that was really
Psychological first aid,
interesting. Yeah. So that was very interesting, and I thoroughly enjoyed the program. Got some nice tips out of there.
I think the one thing, either I'm going in or out or you are, I'm sorry.
I think I was. Go ahead, Lisa. Lisa, did you have something to say? I think you're going in and out. Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, can anybody hear Lisa?
I think my internet connection
Yeah,
is a
Lisa,
little wonky. So,
Carol, you've been seeing all the time.
Okay. We'll move
Why
along.
why don't we go back to Laura? I know there's a lot of, we talked a little bit about HR and some tech, but anything else you'd like to weigh in on, and then we'll wrap up with Margaret.
Sure. I guess we focused on HR, so hiring, leaves, and we've been working with staff individually on medical accommodations within the building for things that they need. But technology wise, we just had I think it was our 6th distribution last night, and our final major distribution of student Chromebooks. So we did almost 2 per building. And then last night was for anybody who couldn't make those other pickups, we did a final sort of all call. And that's been, I just have to, say the secretaries that work at the buildings have been a phenomenal help in managing Chromebook distribution since the spring. They are the backbones of every building and every principal, and they are the ones who I end up really communicating a lot with, and they work with my team. So I just want to thank them very much for all of their hard work. And they're usually the ones answering the emails, answering the phone calls, working on the spreadsheets of, data and inventory. And they've also been showing up and physically being there to do a lot of the handouts. So last night, it was nice to have our last one. We do have a form online on the under instructional technology website for anybody who has not yet requested a device. Anyone who requested after September 7th, it's in the form. We've notified them that we will have to address their specific needs at a later date. My team has spent a lot of time, preparing these Chromebooks, getting them ready, but I really right now need them back in the classrooms, making sure technology is hooked up. Tomorrow is our first day with students, so we are ready to support, the help desk as teachers may need things, parents and students may need things. So that is live also for families, students and teachers, the help desk, and there's also a link to that on the instructional technology page. Tomorrow, my staff and I will be available on an all-day Google Meet for anybody who needs to drop in and ask a question, get a password reset, anything that may happen in that frazzled first day. So we're making ourselves available. So again, back to the Chromebook pickup, we will be, once people fill out the form, we will be able to assign that Chromebook to that student, and then we will be having them at each building, and then the buildings will then, going forward, start arranging for the small amount that's maybe families still need to pick up a device. But if they don't fill out the form, we can't properly tag them and inventory them into our system. So it's important that they do that. We've been, just to wrap up of some of the work with the tech coaches that worked for us this summer. We have a student and family website with resources, and it's on the website now, and it will continue to grow. So I have 2 tech coaches, Alexis Albano and Megan Boyle, who are going to continue to support that work on that public facing website for our students and families as we get more and more resources. And as the teachers learn more and more of the resources, because they're learning. We just had a session today on CAMI, for example. We're going to keep updating that, and we're gearing that really towards the students. So if they have, specific questions, they might be able to find quick answers on that site. And then we have our internal website that I begun last spring, just in the pandemonium of the pandemic and trying to support. We're trying to streamline that a little bit. And I have Heather Wynn and Kyle Sinna, another 2 amazing tech coaches who are helping out on that work, making sure that our staff constantly have updated resources and guides and links to anything that they need on that internal website. Another thing was really hammering through all the vendors, hundreds of vendors that of programs and apps and software that our teachers rely on, free or purchased, to make sure that they are EdLaw 2D compliant. So we have a master list that we're sharing with staff, and by October 1st, we will have a public facing list that will go on the website per the law of all the Parent Bill of Rights that have been signed by every single vendor. So we've had to have a contract, a third-party addendum, and a Parent Bill of Rights signed by every vendor for us to allow them to use to make sure that students' information is protected properly. So that was quite a lift. Again, the people worked on that this summer and are going to continue to help are also tech coaches. So Elisa Rosen, Heather Wynn, and Mary Beth DeGennaro. And I'm saying all these names because they've done important work, and I just want to make sure that they're recognized. And the other thing, next week we have half days across the district. So all of our tech coaches, we have 20 tech coaches across K through 12. We'll be using those afternoons to have various tech sessions. This is something we did last spring in a full day experience, but we're going to be spreading this out through the week. So they all have created events, and teachers can pop in and join different sessions that seem to call to them or things that they want to learn more about. Also, our tech coaches have been doing office hours, and so that's already started last week. So they have office hours in the morning and the afternoon. This helps them stay a little bit more focused because they are teachers and they are trying to manage their daily load. So rather than getting inundated with emails and questions, we're asking staff to utilize those office hours. They sign up with appointment slots in Google Calendar, which has been really helpful. And so it's really geared and focused to what they need. As we roll out, we will also be offering office hours and support to parents, but the tech coaches just asked me to give them a little time to get themselves settled and get the teachers settled. So for now, we're asking that if parents have just general questions on, what's going on in their classroom, to reach out to the teacher. But we are looking down the road for some more larger support and training for families. And then just in general, I said this to staff yesterday, nothing's going to go perfect. We know things will crash. We know things will not work the way we want them to. It'll be frustrating. It'll be stressful. We all know just on a Zoom call, nothing works perfectly every single time. And so I just wanted to remind them to just have patience, use these next, few days and weeks just to reconnect with the students. We haven't seen these kids in person for months. So when they actually physically come back, that's going to be really exciting just to see each other again and even just connect over the summer. Some people have had really challenging periods of time. We've all been in stressful situations. So, as educators, and that's what we all are at the heart, and we all started in this business as educators, it's about connecting with the kids. So we're using technology, and it's a basic Google Meet, say hello, ask how you are, how was your summer, how are you feeling about this coming year, and just trying to get those basic relationships started. And we're working as fast as we can. we purchase most of as many programs as I've said this over and over again, as many things as I can purchase, I've purchased through BOCES this year. And sometimes that means I didn't get BOCES to sign the contract because they were waiting on EdLaw 2D things until just a few weeks ago. So we're working as fast as we can to roster programs and get everything syncing within a campus. And we're making good progress. And so we'll see in the next week or two what the teachers are starting to roll out to their students. K through 8, we have a really streamlined system now with Google Classroom. So I'm really proud of the tech coaches for some of that work. Christina Ogowetsky did a lot of that work over the summer, creating classes for the teachers to actually participate in, and lessons for students. And we also have the high school who are in intensive training in Schoology. People like Stephanie Geiger at the high school has been creating tutorials and videos and helping teachers and helping students. So, we're all in this together, and I ask everybody to please just have patience and know that we're all working as hard as we possibly can to pull this off. It is quite a feat, I think, what we are pulling off. As Joe said, it's almost like we are recreating schools. So I'm very proud of everybody's resilience and, all the people that have helped kind of make this happen. So.
Thank you. One question before I get to you, Bill. You said that there is a place where parents can go to get help with passwords and things like that for their kids' devices. Can you just repeat where they can do that?
Sure. So Ani, the easiest way, if you go on the website under Departments, Instructional Technology, that has the page for all the links. So there is a help desk link right there. It is a help desk link called Mojo. It's what we use internally, and we've now opened it up so students and families can use it. Prior, we were using an email or a form, but the help desk really keeps us stay organized. I mean, today my staff have about 175 help desk tickets that they have to answer, but we're able to keep things organized if we use that system. So we just want to make sure if a student or a parent emails us, it doesn't get lost. So if they use that help desk, it'll help us make sure we get to them very much more effectively. So yes, the help desk link on the instructional technology page is on there. And then also under the one-to-one device link, there's a big description about the Chromebooks and all of the relevant links next to that. One thing, we did offer the option for families to purchase insurance on the Chromebooks, and we've had only a really small amount. We've only had about 17 families sign up for that. So I just want to remind people too, if they are interested in having their Chromebook insured, there are links to sign up directly through that. And then at the back end, they give me a report so I know who has that insurance. We're dealing right now with some people not returning their charger cords, for example, from the spring, and those cost quite a bit of money. So now we're having to deal with replacing those and having to then charge families if they did not return these devices or keys get broken. I mean, part of what we have to expect with the heavy use of our technology is that things will break, things will fall apart at times. So if people can, I would suggest purchasing the insurance or purchasing a really good case for their Chromebook. And there's also a link on there. If anybody has financial needs and they need assistance, the HHCEF is working with us to provide cases for families. So there is a form on the page as well that they can complete. And then we will immediately work on purchasing their child a case.
Thank you, Laura. Bill, you had a question?
Yes, Laura, you had briefly mentioned videos. I know as part of the technology committee, we had discussed videos to be used district-wide for teacher education. Given our current situation of teaching remotely, are we utilizing any YouTube type videos for how-tos for our students and our parents? Are we doing that? And for what type of stuff?
So we try to use a lot of our, homegrown videos if we can, with our own tech coaches, because it's a familiar face and a familiar voice. But the website that we have internally, And some of the ones that are public facing for students and families might be culled from the internet, from YouTube, from, that our tech coaches felt, you know what, this person really covered this, and we're going to use that video, and we link it. And then there's a lot that our tech coaches have created themselves.
So that's available to the students and the parents.
Yep.
Great.
And it will be, it's a work in progress. So right now, if you go on to the Instructional Technology website, you'll see the link to that page. And you'll see more resources right now for students than families. And then we're going to continue to add to it over the next few weeks as well, as teachers really get more comfortable with some of the tools, because we have added some new tools for this school year.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Corey?
Sorry. Just had a quick question. So Laura, it sounds like, for parents to get help on the website, they've got to dig in pretty deeply. Is there a way, because it's a pretty significant issue, is there a way to bring that more prominently, maybe to the front page like we did with some of the COVID notifications?
Sure, we could do that.
Okay, thanks.
And Corey, I don't know if you've looked through the websites, but I know last time you had mentioned, the streamlining and how the websites look. So I'm just curious if you had a chance to look through any of the building specific sites.
No, I will comb through that more now.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I absolutely will. And can I also just make a point here? I love the fact that you guys got Zoom. Thank you. I think this is a huge step forward. I think just from a streaming quality standpoint, from an interaction standpoint, I think it's great. I'm also going to make a suggestion that maybe we have a coaching session for everybody on this meeting on how to use Zoom properly, and maybe extend some of the functionality that we have. I know, we can share documents on Zoom, which may or may not impact the streaming, but there are other things we can be doing, like even inviting the public into the Zoom itself as view-only participants. So the fact that we have it is a huge step in the right direction. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much.
You spoke and we listened.
All right.
Yes, and there are a lot of features of the webinar license that we now have, and Greg and I were actually talking about that before the meeting started. So, I have to say this is very much what Google Meet looks like for many of the students. It's just when it's streamed, we couldn't stream Google Meet publicly, and with some of the enhancements that Google Meet is coming out with in October. I don't know why they waited till October when schools are already starting, but that's what's happening. But some of those features will be very much like Zoom. But yes, for the live streaming, I think for this kind of public forum, I agree with you, Corey, and I'm glad we made the decision to move forward. So thank you for pushing us into this direction.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for Laura? All right, I think Margaret is next, correct?
Correct.
You want to start, Joe?
Sure, this is Margaret. Margaret has been working very closely with our administrative staff, our teacher leaders, our departments, in making sure things are aligned, that they feel comfortable, and that they're ready to go. The last 4 days of staff development, she'll get into a lot of it, but has been really engaging. We've received a lot of positive feedback from our staff. And we asked a lot of questions of our staff in terms of our grade level leaders, department chairs, team leaders, in terms of what they felt they needed and how we could use this time appropriately. As I said earlier, we have half days over the next 7 school days, which will provide us additional time for some staff development to make sure staff feel comfortable with our new and improved remote learning plan that was mandated by the state. As well as opportunities for schools to meet as groups and make sure they're ready in terms of the various Department of Health and CDC requirements. So Margaret has been central in quarterbacking all of these different initiatives to make sure that 250-ish teachers feel heard and that that we're using our time wisely. So I'll turn it over to Margaret to give some highlights of last 4 days and what to expect over the next week and a half.
So a tremendous amount of professional development, which is the biggest reason why we wanted the delay, was to be able to bring all of our teachers back, including, as you heard from my two colleagues, many new teachers. Some teachers that aren't new, but are new to positions they did not hold last year, in some cases for many years, and get them comfortable with curriculum, materials, their colleagues, the physical layout of classroom spaces. Many of them have been in over the past few days to see what it is they're coming back to, and mourning the loss of the beautiful, warm, inviting spaces that we had last year, and trying to imagine what this year will be like as they welcome their kids in the coming days. Also working very closely with the administrative staff, the elementary principals. I feel as though we talk twice a day, trying to problem solve together. You also heard my colleagues say that one of the things we've been saying to one another is there is no way that we can possibly understand everything that is going to happen the very first day we have our children in front of us. We just know that there will be something we forgot or something we didn't over focus on, and we will have to take a deep breath and problem solve on the fly. I am confident that we can do that together. I will say that the staff, and I've talked to so many, I feel like the whole staff at one point or another over the past week and a half. And I sense in my conversations with them a camaraderie of we can do this together, we got it, we've got each other, we know what we have to do. Really starting to settle in with folks as we get closer and closer. I know tomorrow is visitation day at the elementary levels, and the elementary staff today was very excited about seeing children again for the first time in 6 months. We are doing what Cindy Kramer called a meet and beep with the remote students, so they can at least see their teacher before they go online for the very first time, and that's a big concern for staff. So I'm looking forward, even though I will not be there because I do not want to complicate anyone's space. I'm looking forward to hearing from them at the end of the day tomorrow and on Friday about how all of that went and what else we need. We've been largely in the PD, I'll say at the elementary level, we've been largely focused on thinking about not just the children who are remote only, but the fact that we could be remote at any moment, and preparing ourselves both mentally for that and also preparing students so that they have materials they can take and leave in their home to continue that instruction if heaven forbid we have to go in that direction. With the secondary staff, they've been doing a lot of work, as Laura said, around Schoology at the high school. We've been working with the team from Meteor Ed at middle school and high school. They are doing some PD right now around the hybrid model. So I have kids live in front of me and I have kids on the computer in front of me in the same period. How do I manage that? And talking about the extended learning time that happens in the block schedule. Additionally, some of our departments at secondary are going to work with individual consultants so that they can meet the needs of, we have someone coming in to work with LOTE, we have another consultant coming in to work with the two math departments, middle and high school. I have offered that to all of the department leaders at middle school and high school, meeting with an ELA consultant tomorrow afternoon to talk about that. So to the best that we can manage, I want everybody to be as comfortable as they can be in a new teaching environment. At secondary, we're very lucky that our teachers will be teaching when school opens pretty much the same content that they've been teaching. So it's a flip from the elementary school where a lot of people have been moved to different grade levels and new curriculum. They are teaching in a different model, but at least they have the comfort of the curriculum that they have known and have some depth in. So that's an advantage for them. Nonetheless, they still have challenges that we have to meet, and that is exactly what we are attempting to do together. So again, the heavy emphasis on PD, on working with principals for final placements of students and staff, making sure everybody has the curriculum material they need to be successful, and off we go.
Margaret, I know there's been a lot of anxiety around the block schedule, especially for the high school. Can you address that a little bit? Why we decided to go to the block schedule?
So as we have talked about in different settings, when we first received the guidance from the state ed and the DOH, we were a little bit unsure if we could even open secondary because the first set of guidelines were so restrictive. They did not want children changing classrooms. They only wanted one-way hallways. You couldn't obviously touch anything. So the second set of guidance eased up a little bit, and it now allowed children to change classrooms, but the guidance was minimize cohort mixing. So keep kids with the same kids as much of the day as possible. And we know at elementary, that is the way the elementary division works. And then minimize transitions as much as possible, because we all know that the secondary, middle and high school change classes frequently through the day. We discussed it as a group, and then I believe that Joe, and he can talk more elegantly to this than I can, asked the John middle school principal and Jim the high school principal to construct a block schedule that would in fact achieve that goal. And that was done for, Joe, what was the submission to the state, the first one?
It was July 31st.
Okay, so in our plan, we had to show those schedules. So those schedules were completed for that submission. And when I say completed, I don't mean that kids were placed in them. I mean that the schedule of the day was drawn out so that as NYSED reflected on the plan, they could see that we're changing classes only 5 times a day, and here are the transitions, and here is the time between transitions, etc. But that is what drew our attention to the opportunity the model provides for health and safety reasons.
And I'll jump in and say this was also an effort that was supported by BOCES, in that BOCES provided some staff development for principals across the region to talk a little bit about block schedule, talk about different use of time, and block schedule has certain connotations, but basically longer learning periods that for our purposes in terms of opening a schools in a pandemic would limit the amount of hallway traffic, limit the amount of transitions, limit the amount of students who are in school at the same time, at the same place. I mean, it's a similar philosophy from the DOH and State Education Department of elementary students not leaving their classroom. I mean, elementary students will leave their classroom to go outside for mask breaks and for other reasons, but aside from that, the elementary students and schools are somewhat expected to keep them stationary. And so the goal in investigating different uses of time at the middle school and high school was to sort of achieve the same. There are many districts around us that use time differently. Many districts have different floating and rotating schedules. And in conversations with the high school and middle school administrative team, the proposal was a 75 to 80 minute block schedule. It's for health and safety reasons. We can certainly discuss the educational merits, but different high schools, or should I say different school districts, have different schedules that just meet their needs. And this is sort of a one-time opportunity to slow things down at those schools. And slow things down meaning the number of transitions, the number of times kids are in a hallway, the different number of groups of kids that teachers will see. In a traditional schedule in the high school, teachers see 5 or 6 different groups of kids. And as a student, you're in 9 different spaces if you're a high school student. In the schedule we've proposed for this year, you're in 4 different places, including lunch. So 5 different spots. We've reduced the transitions. We've reduced the amount of time for students to transition. So the philosophy behind a block schedule, while that has educational merits and opportunities for longer instructional periods and pedagogical issues or remedies, this was about health and safety. And I know that it seems like the schedule is taking on a life of its own. I'm sorry that it has. It's basically taking the old, I'll use the high school for example. The old high school schedule had 9 periods. For a student, one of those periods was lunch. So they had 8 academic periods during a day. High school students still have 8 academic periods, but they meet every other day. So 4 on one day, 4 on the next. It was a decision we felt needed to be made, and swiftly, as Margaret said, in terms of our timeline to submit and get ready, was just a matter of weeks. And it's not perfect. It's not a panacea, but it's closer to meeting those guidelines, and I think keeping students and staff safe than the alternative. We provided, as Margaret mentioned, a lot of staff development over the last 4 days for teachers. It actually has been a conversation those schools have been having for years in terms of teaching for longer periods of time and series of activities in those classrooms. And we'll continue to support those teachers as we go. But make no mistake, the recommendation to do this was based on health and safety standards that we felt as we've designed this entire school year. We've designed the school year with systems and structures around health and safety standards. And as I said earlier, we wouldn't ask anyone to do something that would set them up for failure, or something that we didn't feel that could be done and that could be done well.
All right, does anybody have questions?
I was just wondering if we could address how staff and teachers and principals were involved in the decision to move to the block schedule.
Sure. As Margaret mentioned, this came out in terms of some guiding principles from the various agencies. We had a series of conversations with the high school and the middle school. The middle school, Mr. Owens, for example, has been an administrator and also a teacher in the block schedule, so he's familiar with it. Mr. Mackin has been a high school principal for a good long time, and he was certainly familiar with it. So the rationale was simple. The rationale was, as I said earlier, to slow things down. At that same time, and that was maybe mid-July, that we started constructing it, or at least philosophically looking at the tenets of it to move forward with it. It was around that time, I know Margaret was working with some of the various teacher instructional consultants that our district and the middle school and high school particularly, had worked with for quite some time. And that is right up their alley. So it was in the summer that we identified what training we could do. We asked them whether or not this was attainable. Certainly, we were organizing this for health and safety reasons, but wanted to make sure that it wasn't too big of a leap. We've worked with this group, Meteor Education, as Margaret mentioned, for a good long time. They've had they have a really great reputation, and our staff enjoy working with them. So that was easy to overcome. In terms of communication to staff, I wasn't in those meetings or on those emails, but I know throughout the summer, the different department chairs or folks were engaged to some extent with each of their principals or administrative teams. I know over the last number of weeks, our administrative team, meaning our district office folks, have participated in meetings. I've met with groups of teachers at both the middle school and high school. I know Margaret, Laura, and Lisa had. And it's different, and the schedule looks different if you're a student or a parent, and you get it, but the mechanics of it are the same. It's 8 periods of program, or 8 class periods, just rotating 4 at a time. So that's sort of the level of involvement, but make no mistake, and I will make no secret about it, we had a short period of time to make that decision, and to trust each other that we felt that we could do it and do it well. Are there hiccups? Of course. Are there classes that students thought they could take that they can't as a result? Yes. Is that a function of the schedule? I don't believe so. Every year around this time, maybe a little earlier in September or late August, the school counselors are working with kids and parents on conflicts and the fact that not every student can take every class that they wanted to. We make the tough decision that we don't offer classes, that due to low enrollment, we can't offer every AP class or every language class because it's just not financially feasible, or we don't have the staff to do that. So I don't want the schedule to be this dark cloud hanging over us. The schedule is a different use of time. It's how we take a traditional, as we call it in our field, a traditional schedule, and spread it out over 2 days. We lengthen the periods. We provide a little more opportunity for teachers and kids to go in greater depth in certain content. And we'll make adjustments as we go, like we will with anything.
Lisa, did you have a follow-up question?
No, I think that's good. I just was also wondering with the welcoming back to school, we at one point talked about having special events for the 6th graders, 9th graders, 12th graders, those coming back in, for new changes like that. Is that still happening, or I don't have a child in those age categories, so I don't really.
Yeah. So each school is planning how to, dates and times to bring students in very small groups and in a facilitated fashion, because that was part of the intent of slowing down or phasing in the reopening, was because we do have 6th graders who have never stepped foot in the middle school, and the same goes for 9th graders. So they're building that, and they're going to work with their staff and try to find time to do that safely and make sure those needs can be met. In particular, at the high school, they're using their first 2 half days, tomorrow and Friday, for in-school orientation purposes, about the new systems and structures, how to read their schedule, when classes rotate, what the intent and what the expectation is on Wednesdays. And those are activities, I think it's important to underscore, those are activities that normally take place during the school day anyway. That we pull students out for first and second period, or Mr. Owens at the middle school does town halls for a period or more. We're just using our time a little bit differently to ease everyone, the adults and the children, into a new environment. But those programs and initiatives and those desires are certainly under consideration, and when they feel good about a schedule, they'll share that with families.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have questions? Alex?
Back to the block schedule. So teachers have been given specific professional development on how to, because this is new for them. That's been part of what they've been working on over the past couple of days on how to instruct during a block schedule.
Yes, and it will continue. So the consultant that Joe's referring to actually offered 2 days before we started, and some of the departments signed up to begin the conversation. Now that consultant company is scheduling with the AP at the middle school and one of the APs at the high school over the next week and a half when we have the half days, and they'll be working in the afternoons with mostly by department, just to make it easier for everybody, to give them some support, some resources for both, as I said, the extended learning time and the hybrid model.
Thank you.
Yep.
Look, there is a lot of new things happening in our schools. The reality is, what we've been asked to do, I'll use middle school and high school, for example, to provide an in-school model full-time, a sometimes in-school model, and a full remote model. We're trying to use as many of our same staff to do this at the same time, and it's new to us. It's new to every school across the state. That's why we had to split high school and middle school students into 2 groups, so that literally we split the population. So we just turn the volume down and intensity of both schools. If I'm a middle school or high school teacher, I'm going to be teaching a group of kids in front of me, and I'm going to have a group of kids on the computer. The other thought was, with an extended learning period of time, you have the opportunity to get to those kids. The other piece is, in a 75 or 80-minute period, high school kids too are going to need some sort of mask break. So it's the philosophy of a block schedule or extended learning time really mimics and mirrors what happens in elementary schools, where kids are together and they're with their teacher for a good chunk of time. And then they may rotate. They may rotate through centers. Some kids may go receive services. They may break and go to phys ed or go to a special. So it's not a foreign language. It's new to us, and we're going to help people along the way and make sure that we don't miss anyone. To make sure they feel heard and make sure that they feel supported.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions or comments?
I do.
Lori?
I don't know what I really want to ask because I'm in the deep of this, man. And I mean, everything that we're saying sounds absolutely wonderful. That's going to help them. And I know we have to expect all different things, but on the teacher end of it, are they getting to practice? And with this, let me clarify something first. Kids are in school every single day, whether they are virtual or in class. Am I correct? So there should be all synchronous learning at the high school level.
If you're a high school student, you are in one of two groups. And
Right.
if you're in group 1, you go on Monday, Tuesday. And if you're in group 2, you go Thursday, Friday. On Monday and Tuesday, group 2 who's home will join the class virtually.
So
and
they
then it
have
will
to. So
flip.
they don't have a choice. So they.
Oh, no.
Right.
They are following their bell schedule. They need to be present. We need to take, the guidance is very clear. You need to take attendance every day, every period. If you're a secondary school, we expanded that and said your camera has to be on and you need to be engaged. Absolutely.
And I know there's a lot of construction. Teachers haven't been in the building, right? At the high school?
Some have, yeah. We gave them, because all of the staff development is virtual, we gave them the option to participate physically from their classroom or remotely. I don't have a ticker of everyone that did come in, but our parking lots were not full, but it was nice to see them with cars and with staff coming in and out.
And they have had training because I practiced today with my kids all day long because we just didn't have enough PD. And I know you guys are saying there was a ton offered, etc. But we are ready. I teach math. I am at the board all the time. You don't type math and stuff like that. So I am at the board, and this is what I have to do. I have to take my Chromebook and point it at my TV or my smart screen, whatever you guys want to call it. And I have to, every class, 10 kids have to come online, and 9 kids are in my classroom. Is that the way we're doing it? Do teachers know that that's what they're doing? Or have they been able to do that and share their screens? They know how to do all this stuff and use their screen, Castify.
Yeah, I'll let Laura weigh in on that. That goes back to a lot of her work that started last spring to improve our model from last spring and what we can expect to be different this year. So Laura, do you want to?
Well, before Laura
Oh.
talks, Cora, you are absolutely right. Like, we did it today, and we're a small school, and we had crashes today, and we had all of our teachers trying stuff today, and it was so slow, and kids couldn't get on, and there was a bunch of. So
if you could also, when you do address this, if you could also address whether the teachers are actually in school or they're doing it remotely, because there's also that issue.
What do you mean?
If the teachers are actually in the classrooms, because not all the teachers are coming in. Are the teachers remotely, or is there an aide in the classroom with the kids? Not all the teachers are coming in.
That's only if they take that type of leave. If they're working, they need to be in the classroom. Am I correct?
No.
Yes.
Not entirely.
Yes. When students are in the classroom at the middle school or high school, the teacher needs to be present. There may be situations arise where certain teachers, based on either a leave or based on other circumstances, they may be home while students are live. But that will be on an individual basis, and that will be really based on matters related to COVID. If a teacher needs to be quarantined and the Department of Health directs them to be home, that may be a consideration on an individual basis.
But But it's
we may need
also
to
if somebody,
consider.
but it's also if somebody has a childcare issue. There are
No,
100 reasons.
that shouldn't be.
There is not that. My question is addressing the consistency, whether it's for the children or, you know, whether the teachers in the classroom or how that's being addressed as well. Because
So-
again, you've got people who are in the classroom maybe 2 days a week, but not in the other 2. Because again, there could be a childcare issue, and we addressed that at the last meeting, and there is a conversation about that also.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
hold on.
I'll
Let's
let,
ask my question first.
yeah, let me have Laura talk about both things. Laura gets to do a double dip
True
here.
that.
First, Laura, if you want to quickly give an overview about the tech training and the software and what you and the tech coaches have done, and then if you want to move into one more conversation about the leave and what some of the requirements are for staff to be approved for a leave.
All right, I'll do my best. So I've said this a few times, and I reminded my staff too, our staff, is that we have really invested years and years of time into instructional technology. So there are a lot of new programs and new software, and maybe teachers weren't using Screencastify or Screencast-O-Matic to record a lesson and then post it. But in general, you know, before I even came on board in this position, this was the push. And so, you know, like I said before, you know, teachers had to go through Google level 1, level 2. They had to go through Chromebook boot camps, and the tech coach model has been in place for years. So we've always been pushing and encouraging our school district as a community to embrace instructional technology. It's, you know, as Anthony kind of mentioned earlier when we were talking about being energy efficient and environmentally conscious, this is another thing that's always been present. So I think that's why we were able to do as well as we did in the spring. You know, some better than others, but we pulled this off because we had a lot of those systems already in place. So smart panels, we've been slowly replacing smart panels with smart boards. That's not something I prioritize this year. I'm bringing 3 new ones in based on construction in the science labs at the middle school. But really last year I brought in 20. So when we brought in new smart panels in the fall, we had training for every single user with a smart panel. So they know how to cast, they know how to use the Chromebooks and use their own device. So a lot of this stuff has been happening. But in the spring, we really spend tons and tons of hours and time quickly learning from each other, from people around the region, sharing resources, you know, that site that I talk about, that internal site was really the house of all of these resources. And teachers learned a lot during that period of time. Now what we've done is really kind of narrowed down tools that we've identified that we think are valuable, or, you know, fiscally we can afford to purchase. We can't purchase everything, and provide training with that. So some of our tech coaches have spent time this summer, like I said, learning it, creating resources for students and for teachers. And even now they're still learning and continuing to provide that support. So it's ongoing, but yes, we are a school district where our plan is every teacher has a district issued Chromebook, and that has a web camera and a microphone in it. And the plan is for that is to be their tool to communicate at the middle school and high school level when they are running a remote hybrid class. Is it perfect and beautiful and wonderful? No. But did we want to spend $1,000 per classroom to outfit it to be that way? We couldn't afford to do so. And we figured out some workarounds. We are looking also into adding some additional web cameras. We're looking into trying to get some better Bluetooth headphones. We're asking that families bring in, if kids have a Bluetooth headphone with a microphone, and the same thing with a teacher. We have to sometimes say yes to purchases and no to purchases, and we can't buy everything that I would love to purchase for everybody to make this amazing. But so that was the decision we made, that these Chromebooks were going to be that tool. So that is what they are doing. If they have a panel, they can easily cast to that panel directly. If they're on an older smart board, Smart Learning Online has a lot of great features now, and they're also using, most of our tools are web-based. So the intention is that they would be in a Google Meet, just like we're right now, and the kids would be behind my computer in the classroom physically, so they wouldn't be seeing those who are on here, where I am. And that, so the teacher can talk to the kids physically and also the kids that are remotely in front of them. We also, I could go back to what Margaret was saying, a lot of the PD and the training is, and it's again, stuff that's been happening before the past year in Meteor, is no one wants kids to sit still for 40 minutes or 80 minutes listening to a teacher lecture. It's all about, active engagement and small group instruction. So naturally that already happens in classrooms. I'll use Mary Fanning, first grade teacher. She's one of our tech coaches. She, for 2 years now, has been using a smart panel on Chromebooks, and she has kids break out into small groups. She pushes out the work to their Chromebooks. She can monitor what's going on from her standpoint. And the kids are working collaboratively. So they don't need to be sitting still, and we don't want teachers to design lessons like that. So those kids that are at home and the kids that are in the classroom, the goal is that they get 15, 20 minutes of a real mini lesson. Maybe it's a flipped classroom, depending on how the teacher chooses to share the information, and then creates meaningful activities during that period of time. And then the teacher's there to check in and also have a closing at the end. So I think maybe I answered the questions around technology. Okay. And then regarding the consistency of staffing in the classrooms that Mary Pat asked, we do have consistency across the way. Right now, the only issues where I would say we don't have consistency based on intermittent leaves are more with our teaching assistants, but the actual teachers of record, we do have a consistent 5 days a week at this point in time that we're aware of. And again, we can only know by what we know and what staff tell us. And so we've been working really closely with all of the unions, and specifically the teachers unions, to please communicate whatever needs people have sooner than later. So we've been keeping close tabs on that, and teachers have been communicating with us if there are any challenges or needs. I think I covered it. If I missed anything, let me know.
Thank you, Laura. Does anybody else have questions? Oops, I muted myself by accident. All right, Jody, do you have anything else?
Yeah,
everybody?
I'll just wrap up by thanking our staff, our administrative team, the show of resilience and flexibility and professional grit has been amazing. Public education has been pushed further than it ever has before, and in a really, really short period of time. We have a lot to process. We still have much work to do, but I feel that we put together the best plan that we could with the resources we have, with a fixed deadline. Many of these initiatives, if we did it differently, would take a year plus to discuss and talk about and to create buy-in, but this isn't a typical year, and we hope that some of our strategies and our approach is just temporary because of the situation we're in. But never before have public schools across New York State or the nation opened in the middle of a pandemic, and it's a real situation. I just received an email today. Another school district in our county got a report of positive COVID tests, and that school will not open to students tomorrow. Things are happening quickly, and they're happening much quicker than our profession is used to, and they're happening much quicker than we care and that we prefer. So we are going to be pushed as an organization, as a profession, and so far, I'm really pleased to be working with such outstanding people. It hasn't been perfect. We have already learned a great deal, and as I said before, when the book is written on how to open schools in a pandemic and the lessons learned, we're going to learn a great deal, and we're going to be able to reflect, and we're going to be able to grow. Hopefully we never need to do it again. But there was no template, and there was no game plan. The state basically asked 700 school districts to do what they thought was best, and we tried to hold hands with our neighbors and our friend school districts and do what we thought was right. And that's, we're on the eve of opening a school year unlike any other. I also know that it's created a lot of anxiety and stress and pressure in the community, and I know that because I've had those conversations, I've read those emails, I've met with those people, whether on the phone or through our video meetings, and I know that there are some people who feel that they were left out of the conversation or left out of the planning and felt that there should have been a different model or more inclusion or a different way for us to get to our destination. And for that, I apologize if people feel that they were shunned or if they weren't part of this process. No one intended to discount or leave anyone out. Our intention was to try to develop a series of systems that kept health and safety at the forefront, and that allowed our folks to do their job the best they can. I have a meeting a little later this week on Friday, I believe, with our PTA leaders, and we're going to discuss this because there are some hurt feelings and there are some conversations that we need to have or conversations that we need to finish. So tomorrow is the beginning of a very unique year. We're going to be making adjustments as we go. And like I said, literally 5 minutes ago, a school is closing for tomorrow. Things are going to happen quickly, and we hope that folks understand that, and we hope that they work with us through this process. This is new for everybody, and as Laura said, if we haven't been all in it together before, we certainly are now.
Thank you, Joe. Does anybody have any follow-up to Joe's comments?
Just one quick more. So I know that we had received, and I'm sure they're going to be read tonight, a lot of parents were concerned that some kids were going to miss time. So if we're going from a 9-period day to 4 and 4, isn't something already missing? And then, I mean, it's going to be what it is. That nobody knows what's going to happen.
Well,
I know some people were concerned about missing time, but with the extended period, probably not, right?
Yeah. Look, every school day is going to be shortened compared to last year, right? We have identified about 2/3 of our parents want to drive their children. So we're going to, we're working with, let's use the 3 elementary schools in terms of bus drop off versus parent drop off. We're going to have kids trickling in after 9 o'clock when school starts. And those are some lessons we've learned from other districts. So regardless of the schedule, let's say, we knew that first period was not going to start at the same time, the same way that it always had. With longer periods of time, yeah, you limit the amount of transition minutes in the hallway. You limit the amount of warm up and closure activities because you're not doing that 8 or 9 times a day. You're only doing it 3 or 4, depending on your schedule. We proposed when we submitted our plan to the state, Wednesday is a remote day for all, with sort of a half day where all the kids go through their schedule in a half day fashion, maybe 25, 30 minutes a period. And then the afternoon, really after lunch, was for office hours or opportunities to meet in small groups or to do some remediation with teachers. That's a work in progress. There are districts who have used that Wednesday to make up for Monday and Tuesday holidays or Thursday, Friday holidays. We may move in that direction as well. What our intentions, began with, as I said, trying to just slow down the traffic and use that Wednesday as a remote for all. The middle school and high school will go through a thorough cleaning. And we may make adjustments there. We may make adjustments to the schedule as we go. We may find, at the high school with the number of kids driving and parents indicating they want to drop their kids off, we're not thinking we're going to start the academic year. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Well, I'll keep going until someone says no. That we weren't going to start the academic day until 8 o'clock, 30 minutes late, because of new routines and new systems. So if we fear that minutes need, or if we believe minutes need to be adjusted, we're going to make those make those adjustments mid-course.
Lori's question reminded me of something I meant to bring up as well. I believe we're going to have to change our school calendar at some point to account for the front loading of the superintendent conference days, right?
Yeah, so at our next regularly scheduled meeting in 2 weeks on the 23rd, we'll have those dates adjusted. It's basically a conference day from November and one, I believe, from March that will move up, as many districts did. They front-loaded their superintendent's conference days to have a bigger chunk of uninterrupted time before kids arrive.
Okay, thank you. And I think that covers it, unless anybody else has any other questions.
I just want one quick.
Alex, yes.
I just want to say thank you to Joe for acknowledging the anxiety. You know, I'm a parent, and I thank you for realizing that we're all just nervous. And I would encourage the administration and the principals to just keep communicating. I know sometimes you can't give us information because it is a work in progress, but more information is always better, and that I think will help ease a lot of concerns and anxieties. So thank you for realizing that's where parents are coming from.
Absolutely, and we'll do that, and you know, we hope that will change people's experience. So thank you.
Okay, so I think that concludes our superintendent's report tonight. That was very thorough. Thank you, everybody. There are still a lot of questions, I know. Next is committee reports. I don't believe anybody has committee reports. So that brings us to audience comments. And before we start audience comments, I just wanted to address some emails that I have received since the last meeting asking why the letter from the teachers was not addressed or responded to in public session last time. So in order to address that, I think it would be helpful to talk a little bit about the public comment section of the meeting in general, and then address that question. So the public comment section of the board meeting is just that. It's an opportunity to make public comments at the meeting to be entered into the public record. Comments made at the meeting are responded to in one of several ways. They can be referred to the appropriate administrator for follow-up personally. They can be included during the superintendent's report at a subsequent meeting for public follow-up like we did tonight. They can be by district-wide communication via email or website postings, or sometimes if it's a broader subject that seems to merit the attention, the board might opt to include it in a subsequent meeting on their agenda and have a full presentation. Not to diminish the letter at all, as it raised some very important questions and was signed by many of our wonderful teachers. This same letter has been making the rounds with some minor edits at most of the local school districts and was not really specific to Hendrick Hudson. I first saw it as an open letter to from the Lakeland Federation of Teachers in early August and have seen it multiple times on social media since then. And having the letter read in our public forum allowed our teachers to have their concerns heard by a wider audience. You know, we certainly want our teachers to feel like they're being heard. Both the board and the administration remain committed to the safety of our students and staff members. Many of the questions raised in the letter had already been addressed before the letter was read and were available on our FAQ. We addressed many of them again this evening since they were getting renewed interest. The remaining few are part of ongoing discussions between teachers, building level leaders, and the school administration about all things reopening, including the issues raised in the letter. That is a more appropriate venue for resolution of teachers' concerns. Under normal circumstances, concerns from teachers go through a chain of command and don't come before the board until they have reached the level of union representation in a legal grievance. It would have been inappropriate for the board to address these concerns directly without going through those channels. I hope this makes things a little bit more clear. And in the past, before our public comment section, I would always read a statement on what is expected during the public comment section. I had kind of foregone that during COVID and with our online things, but I think maybe we should re-up that. So to maintain an orderly meeting, the board has established the following guidelines for those wishing to address the board. Each speaker should sign in with the district clerk prior to commenting, or at this time we have you email your comments in to Carmen. When called, each speaker should step up to the podium and state their name and affiliation if applicable prior to starting their comment. Letters, petitions, or other written material should be handed to the district clerk. Again, Carmen is handling these things, so you obviously don't need to sign in. She has already received your emails. All comments must be directed to the board president. Each speaker is permitted 3 minutes for their comments and must be recognized by the board president. The board will listen to comments, but will not necessarily debate or discuss items. Operational matters will be directed to school administrators for handling. The board is not permitted to address personnel or individual student matters in open session. The board may limit repetitive comments in order to give time to others wishing to speak, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. The board expects comments to be made without interference from the audience and in a civil manner. And with that, we can now go to our audience comment section.
Good evening, everyone. Hi. This evening we have 6 statements to be read. The first statement I'm going to be reading is from Rebecca Quigley. I am going to say one thing before I read the statement. The following statement has been edited so it can comply with Board of Education guidelines for public comments. So now I'm going to continue to read her statement from Mrs. Quigley. Dear Hendrick Hudson Board of Education, yesterday's issue of Lanyard proclaimed that we are ready to begin the year. More fictitious words have never been spoken in our school district, and the tragedy here is that this was completely self-inflicted. We have a superintendent who, at the most basic level of our district's response to COVID, has failed to create a state-mandated reopening task force to address the school community's myriad concerns about back-to-school plans. He has held PTA leaders at arm's length and selectively employed volunteers to serve as various agendas when convenient. When PTAs have questioned and demand clarification, they get sidelined and shut out of his communications. We have a school board who on August 12, 2020, received a petition on behalf of 201 concerned members of our community. The validity of signatures on this petitions were questioned upon submission. And despite ultimately being accepted into the minutes for that day's meeting, the content of the petition still has yet to be available to be reviewed by the general public. The PTA is legally sanctioned body. We are tasked with representing the best interests of our parents, teachers, and students in this district. We do not serve at the school district or school board's whim. We will continue to ask questions and demand answers. We will not be silenced or slandered or condescending comments trying to characterize us as entitled. And we will not stand idly by as years of collaboration and community relationships are completely undone by the egos and intransigence of a few. So as one comment, sorry. Okay, the next statement comment is from
Carmen. Before you move on, can I just make a couple of brief comments about this?
Okay.
I know that you have added that petition to the board minutes at this point, right? That was an oversight, so apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. Joe, I know you have a meeting with the PTA on Friday, right? So perhaps you can discuss some of these issues and see what we can do to heal this rift that is obviously occurring. I know you had mentioned that there are some groups that are being discussed to help monitor or to guide our re-entry into school. So I hope you will discuss that further with them and maybe give us some details at the next meeting. Thank you.
The next comment the next comment is from Tamara's Booth, who will be recorded into the records of the minutes. While I appreciate that we are living in unprecedented times, I believe that we were given an opportunity to create something amazing, collaborative, and truly inclusive. Instead of taking this opportunity to craft a unique learning experience for our students while strengthening community bonds, you have driven a wedge between staff, administrators, parents, and the community. The community has called for collaboration, for a voice in the decision-making process, yet we are consistently left out of conversation. Our cares and concerns are negated as the administrators seem to plow ahead making decisions for our children. While I understand that you cannot make everyone happy, there have been several points that the community collectively has asked for. For one, the block schedule. With all the moving parts and the uncertainties, that this does not seem to the time to implement a brand new, complicated concept such as this. You do not have the staff or community support on this, yet it does not seem to matter. As the families that must help our children navigate this difficult time, you choose to dismiss our wishes and concerns. Communication has been an issue. While you offer a plethora of documents, there is not a central streamlined way that families can receive information as it unfolds. One example pertains to the transportation to the tech center at BOCES. I had to reach out to transportation regarding busing to tech. I sent an email on August 19th, August 20th, and September 1st. I was told today on September 8th that transportation to tech will not be available until in-person learning begins on September 29th. When a parent had a concern and called the district office, no one was there to answer their questions or soothe their concerns. It has been deemed safe to return to work in the district offices for months, per guidance from the CDC and Governor Cuomo. Despite this, the administration has chosen to stay away. This absence speaks to lack of consideration there is for community members, students, and families. This comment will be recorded in the minutes.
Well, I see several of you are in the district office. Joe, can you look into this problem with the BOCES transportation issue, please? And the block schedule is an ongoing discussion.
The next comment statement is from Rhonda Malhotra. Dear members of the board, it is with great dismay that I am once again addressing this board. Our concerns as parents have gone unheard. We submitted a petition respectfully requesting that a return to school task force comprised of all community stakeholders be implemented immediately. That request has zero public response and fallen on deaf ears. I also personally submitted my own request that called for an investigation into our superintendent's filing of the reopening plans with the state, which has not been yet responded. We are opening with a delayed start. The other districts surrounding us have opened on time. Why is this? Is it because our buildings are unsafe due to the construction projects? Or is it because we are not prepared due to COVID-19? Or perhaps it is because of being forced to change instructional philosophy and being given only 3 weeks to implement that change. Who would know? We've had no communication from this board or the superintendent regarding this matter. We demand answers. In addition, the failure to start on time is putting our students in academic jeopardy. We have lost this week of instruction, and next week is half days. We also have been told that Wednesday will only be conducted as half days. How are you making up all the lost instruction time? How will our students be prepared to sit there for their Regents and AP exams with confidence? Mr. Mackin and his staff had done their utmost best to pull off the feat of implementing a schedule to fit a brand new pedagogical strategy that generally requires 2 years at best to implement effectively. The high school students are still working with their counselors to resolve scheduling issues, like getting placed in classes that they need to take to graduate. It has left many students without classes they have been banking on taking to further their efforts for college admissions and are of the utmost importance right now to their successes. Here are some of the classes that cannot run due to conflicts: AP Environmental Science, AP European History, AP Computer Science. And finally, to wrap up with a huge safety concern, high school parents learned when we received our child's schedule that the entire student cohort on any given day in-person instruction will be eating together between periods 2-3 and 6-7. Dr. Roller has insisted with me by email, which you have all been CC'd on, that she has implemented the block model based on safety concerns for our children. I would argue that serving lunch to 300 plus kids at one time is way less safe than a couple of extra passings in the hallways and 20 extra minutes in poorly ventilated classrooms. I would once again respectfully ask for further questioning on this method of instruction. It seems to me that a personal agenda is at work, and that, in fact, the health and safety of children and our teachers is not paramount to the core of our argument. In closing, I would like to remind this board of their duty to the taxpayers that elected them. You serve at our pleasure, and your role is to be our advocate. We will put this comment into the minutes.
Thank you, Carmen. There certainly seem to be a lot of questions about the block schedule still and how the high school is operating. I don't know if we might need another question and answer session perhaps for the high school and maybe the middle school, maybe a combined one, because there seems to be a lot of uncertainty about what's going on there.
Okay, the next comment statement is from Lydia Simonetti. I am formally requesting that my questions, comments be read aloud for the Board of Ed meeting on September 9th, 2020. I've been a parent in this district for nearly 12 years. During this time, I have been nothing but supportive. However, I am disappointed in the way that the district has failed to provide transparency when providing information to parents regarding how this year is going to look. While I understand that we are in unprecedented times, I personally think that the information distributed to parents and the way it's been distributed has been incredibly frustrating and has caused much more anxiety, stress, and frustration for families than needed. The most recent example is with the rollout of schedules, especially for high school students. She has 3 bullet points. The first one being, I have personally asked the district a few times to describe how Wednesdays will look as we begin this school year. Although I have received emails back that they have been vague and have not directly answered the questions posed. The explanation I have received is that Wednesdays will only be a half day of education and instruction. The rest of Wednesday's schedule will be used for meetings with counselors and teachers, possibly assemblies, as well as time for students to work together virtually in small groups. My question is twofold. Why are these meetings not being held after traditional school hours, and how will students be monitored and held accountable for their collaborations with other students? As many parents have repeatedly pointed out, a major area of concern is the loss of educational instructional hours in this 2020-21 school year. Instruction does not, for the high school, begin until Monday, September 14th, as students are only attending their orientation session on either Thursday or Friday of this week. With the complete first full week of school being half days and the loss of 37 minutes per day with the new school hours, we are already starting up the school year at a loss of education hours. With these half days and the continuous half day Wednesdays, our kids have considerable less than the 181 days approved on our school year calendar. Please explain in detail how these hours will be made up. The third bullet point, I have been told by many parents that the district has a Monday holiday plan, which essentially allows for Mondays missed due to holidays to be made up with a full day Wednesdays. If this is correct, why has this important piece of information not been explained to parents? Please explain in detail how this Monday holiday plan will work. To recap my concerns, 1, use of Wednesdays for meetings that are historically done after school hours and why our students will miss those valuable instruction hours. Explanation of who will hold the students accountable and monitored for the students' small group collaborations. Number 2, district's plan in detail on how missed educational hours days will be made up to ensure the 181 instructional days are met. Number 3, explanation of the holiday Wednesday plan and why it has not been communicated to parents. In closing, I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank the guidance counselors who work with my children in both the high school and middle school. They have been nothing but helpful and very timely in their replies to any concerns I've had. I look forward to receiving answers to the questions I have posed above. This statement will be recorded in the minutes.
Thank you. This again looks like a high school, middle school communication issue and questions. Perhaps someone could get back to Ms. Simonetti and FAQ perhaps, or Q&A. Thank you.
Okay, the last statement comment comes from Erica Mills. And so, dear Hendrick Hudson Board of Education, I'd like to start by defining community. Community is a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. Community is also defined as feeling a fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. I'd like I'd like you to ask yourselves, what does community look like to you? And who are the stakeholders in our community? Have these community members been represented in regards to reopening schools? Do parents, students, teachers, principals, nurses, guidance counselors, teaching assistants, school secretaries, bus drivers, and custodians feel like they are part of our community right now? They may live or work here, but do they feel like they have been heard or represented? My guess is most of them will tell you no. Have you spoken with any of these stakeholders yourselves? I'm not referring to our school administrators or the 7 employees on the Hendrick reopening task force. I'm talking about the rest of people in the community. If you have really spoken to them, you would know we have questions and concerns and are unhappy with the overall process. My guess is most would tell you that they are grateful for our building staff. They have worked tirelessly to respond to emails, fix problems, and communicate with us. At the high school and middle school, they have been forced to squeeze everyone's schedule into a block, which now we see doesn't work for many students. At the high school, they have had to cut courses at the last minute with very little explanation. Students have to make choices that they should not have to make. At Blue Mountain, the block schedule has children switching classrooms 8 times and 7 times instead of 9. Every time they move, they're with different cohorts. How does this solve anything? The questions I asked about the block schedule went mostly unanswered. I was accused of not caring about student and staff safety. Meanwhile, teachers have the same concerns I do. We all deserve answers to our questions and responses to our statements that include facts, not accusations, and in condescending tone. A community petition was submitted with over 170 names. It was glossed over by the Board of Education. No public response was given to these community stakeholders. Don't we deserve a voice in this process? We know we are in a pandemic. We know there are guidelines that must be followed. But these guidelines will to be interpreted, processed, and implemented the best way possible. And without hearing from stakeholders, how is this possible? We all want what's best for the community. Why have we not been given this opportunity? I will leave you with this. Where do we go from here? How do we get our community back? One of the things I have loved most about living here is the sense of community we have shared. We have always been able to put our differences aside and come together. We need the Board of Education to work with us and help us bridge the gap. Sincerely, Erica Mills. We'll put this into the board minutes. Those are all the comments that we received.
Thank you, Carmen, and thank you, Erica, for your input. We certainly do want to see a collaborative community. I actually do speak to many members of our community on a daily basis, and fortunately, not everybody is unhappy with the way things have gone. I think all of us here agree that, as Joe has said many times, as we look back, maybe our communication could have been smoother, and we're learning lessons as we go along. One of the things that I am kind of rolling around my head, and maybe we'll discuss that at a future board meeting, is maybe we need to consider having a full-time communications person on board. We only have a part-time person, and many school districts of our size have a full-time communication person to assist, and perhaps in times like these when everybody's stretched really thin, that would be helpful. But yes, and the petition to the Board of Education was actually delayed because of the hurricane, and I had responded to that petition because I didn't want those petitioners to have to wait till the next board meeting. So that it also is included in the attachment in the minutes. All right, thank you. That brings us to our board comments and new business section, and I know Lisa has a couple of things for us.
Yes, I do. As I spoke about at our last meeting, there are 2 different pieces of information, 2 letters, and actually one's a letter, one's a resolution. I'd like us to consider completing, approving tonight. The first is the NISPA voter voice letter, and this would be sent to our federal representatives. And what it does is it makes a plea for additional federal funding. And I think that's sort of a no-brainer for most of us. We know that we definitely need this funding. And I would like to see our district support the NISBA organization, New York State School Boards Association, in their endeavors to get additional funding from our federal government. So I'm not quite sure how to best proceed with this. I guess, do we begin reading the letter, Carol, or?
Yeah, I would treat it like a policy. Start reading it and someone can waive further reading and then we can discuss.
Okay. In any given year, school districts ensure they meet not only the academic needs of their students, they address students' social, emotional health, and nutritional needs as well. We thank you for your previous efforts, but need you to know that the struggle of school districts only continues. As Board of Education,
to waive further reading.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any discussions or comments about this letter? We did include it to each of you previously to this meeting.
Comments, questions? Raise your hands. Just speak, whatever you want to do. There's a lot of silence out there. Okay, so I think this is a very important piece of the puzzle, so to speak. You know, funding is going to be very important going forward for us, especially with all of the PPE and the extra equipment that we need for the COVID problem, shall we call it. Not only that, feeding the community, feeding the students, even when school is not in session, there are a lot of added expenses and we really do need financial support. Does anybody else have any comments? I would support that we support this letter. No further comments. I need a poll to see who is in favor and who not. So we'll go, well, Lisa, you're presenting this, so I'm going to assume you're in favor.
I'm in favor, yes.
Mary Pat, what say you? Mary Pat, you need to unmute. Okay, she seems to be having some technical difficulties. Corey, you're next.
I'm in favor.
Okay, Bill?
Does this have anything, is this connected with the decrease in aid, like Enrique was saying, we're being hit with, that ranges with districts from 2 to 20%?
Yes, it does mention that without the assistance of federal aid, the governor's threatened to cut school aid by 20%. So I guess that has now occurred. This would amount to more than $5 billion statewide. And the cost of nearly every aspect of running a district has increased due to COVID, is what the letter states. So it does address that. It states it as being a threat rather than a reality. We could correct that and update it if you would.
No, I have a different concern if they are connected. My concern,
okay.
if they say, oh, you're right, you know, some districts lost 20%, some lost 2%, we're going to average it out and everybody loses 10%, and this backfires on us. I'm just thinking. Enrique, any thoughts on that? Are you familiar with this letter, or?
Honestly, everyone is trying to figure out what is it that they took away. If it was foundation aid, what part of the aid, because it was just a number. I was talking to a couple of my colleagues today, and they were saying, it's like, we don't even understand. We tried to call SED and see if it was foundation, if it was transportation, because, you know, last year we used a lot less gas. We use, you know, all our transportation contracts, we don't use them. And there's no answer. So there might be a reason, a very good reason why someone got 0 and the other one got 20, but no one knows what's the reason. So it's a formula. It's not like, I assume they just didn't say this school, let's give them 20% less, this one 0. I think they used a formula. And if that's the case, it's like everything else. You know, in some cases with formulas you win, and in some cases you lose.
Yeah, but if
I
we're
don't
asking for
think-
change, what are the chances they're going to change that formula?
Very, I don't know, to tell you the truth. In that sense,
I don't think anyone knows. It's not
exactly.
Not a question I think you can answer, but I'm just concerned if, I mean, it sounds great on its face, but I'm playing the
No, but I think that
devil's advocate.
every school in the state and every school in the country sends a letter to Washington saying, my school district is spending more on COVID. We have all these problems and they are cutting our state aid. Please send more money to our state. I don't see anything wrong. But anyway, that's my point of view, and it's only a point of view that it's mine. Everyone is different. That's my 5
Oh, is
cents.
this going to the federal or is this going to the state?
Federal government. So it's our New York State senators and our New York State Congress people.
That's why I'm saying they are not the federal government was not the one deciding who gets caught, who doesn't, or at what percentage. That was the state. And it was only based on lower revenues on the 3-month period. Maybe in the next 3 months, they'll make it up. We only get 2%, and the ones that lost 20 will get 20 more. But I don't know. But if this is going to the federal, they had absolutely nothing to do with the cut in state aid, because they send a block of money and the state decides what to do with it. They don't have the federal government does not have any decision on how the state is going to apply the money.
That's the problem.
Because the letter I'm looking at does not say who it's addressed to, by the way. On board docs, this letter.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
It does not say who it just starts off with in any given year after the date.
Okay, good point. Thank you. It is really more of just a general plea for financial assistance to the school districts in New York State.
Okay, I would be more comfortable with at the federal level, because if it was targeted at the state level, I'd be concerned that they're going to change that.
It's definitely targeted toward the federal level. It was intended to be sent to Senator Gillibrand and Senator Schumer and, you know, our Congress people for the U.S. federal government.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Alex?
I support it.
And Lori? Lori, can you hear me? Yeah, I said Lori. You have to unmute.
Oh, I
There
thought
you
you said Corey, not Lori. I'm looking at Corey saying you can answer.
I could see that.
I have a hard time with this, because as much as I want, you know, what's the state going to do with the money, because we haven't been doing such a good time with our money. Yes, I'll support it.
Okay, so it sounds like we have support to send this on. Do we need to vote on this? Do we need to do an official vote? No, right? Okay. All right, Lisa, the next letter is a resolution. Do you want to start reading that? And if someone wants to move to waive further reading for her so she doesn't have to read the whole thing.
A resolution to urge the New York State Legislature, the New York State Department of Education, and Governor Andrew Cuomo to seek a waiver from the United States Department of Education for New York State assessment requirements under the Every Student Succeeds Act for the 2021 school year. Whereas under the federal Every Student Succeeds Act, ESA, states must administer annual statewide English language arts and math assessments for grades 3 through 8 and science assessments once in elementary and once in middle school.
Reading of the letter.
Thank you.
Could you give us an executive summary, especially for the public who doesn't maybe?
Sure, I might not have seen this.
No exams at the end of the year.
Yeah, basically. I mean, what it is it's asking for leniency with the 3 through 8 testing that happens, that's required through the Every Student Succeeds Act. And it's saying that because there's an increased need with COVID for teachers and staff in school to really focus on supporting students' needs and their health as a result of the impact of COVID, that, you know, requiring these testing is going to put additional stress and burden on our school districts and really be an unfair requirement for our students as well. And that's kind of the gist of it. It's just asking for relief from that testing requirement for this year.
Thank you, Lisa,
Yes.
for that summary.
Yes.
Do Joe, Margaret, Lisa, any of you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, I can weigh in. State testing has been political football for quite some time. And our height, we had anywhere between 25 and 40% of our families opt out or refuse the state assessment. It's been used for purposes that don't necessarily help us with instruction. The test items aren't released, the delay in getting results back, the item analysis is not there and doesn't help us instructionally. We have a lot of different diagnostic assessments that we use that gives us real-time data on students. And still, over maybe half a decade, the state has always tinkered with the assessment, so you never really get a true analysis of year-to-year student growth over time. So especially as we came out of, or the way we came out of last school year, which was almost 30% of the school year, and certainly with all of the unknowns this year, certainly we support it from a standpoint of just trying to calm people and not have that burden overhead as we start the academic year.
So you're saying it's not an accurate assessment anyway. We're not using it for our internal assessments to make sure that our hybrid model or our block schedule or any of those things are effective. And therefore we should do away with it this year, at least.
I can tell you that we sat in on the Regents meeting in July as they were prepping their guidance for the districts, and several of the regents, including Fran Wills, who is our local regent, proposed that we bypass the test this year as a matter of record. That didn't go anywhere, but I know that they're amongst themselves discussing the validity of offering them again this year.
Okay, all right, so given that input, let me go around the room, so to speak. Lisa?
Favor.
Mary Pat?
Favor.
Corey?
Favor.
Bill?
Favor.
Alex?
Favor.
Lori?
Hell yeah, favor. Yes.
Me too. All right. So since this is a resolution, can I have a motion to accept the resolution as stated?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Very nice work, Lisa. Thank you for doing that for us and being a strong advocate for our district and our teachers and our students. That brings us to the end of our more formal, shall we say, board comments, new business. Does anybody else have any board new business or comments that they would like to make?
I have a comment. Being that I don't have children in the district anymore, I am sorry, but I don't know what kind of communique the parents have been getting. But as a board member, I see, and I'm sorry or not sorry to say this, but Joe has responded to every single email that he receives. And I don't know how to say this, and I'm not going to be political, but just because you don't like his answer doesn't mean he's not responding to you. Okay. So he answers a ton of questions. I'm going to say, you know, everybody knows I'm a teacher, right? And your child's teachers and their districts are trying to figure out how to connect with your kids the best way possible, keeping them safe, without spreading the disease and potentially making folks sick, etc. So patience, everybody. You know, in my district, we have a half day every Monday, and it's a wonderful time for teachers to plan and we go over students and plan activities for them. You know, they're gonna get the education. And I know some parents are very worried about it, and I empathize with you, but patience, we are in a different type of time. The only thing I do have to say is, even though we don't have these tests, our teachers, all teachers have to teach. Like I don't know if we have to revisit a curriculum. Like if we all of a sudden say there's no algebra regents, well, teachers, please, that doesn't mean you don't teach anything. It means that we have to sit down again with our teacher leaders or department chairs and make sure we have this curriculum. And wouldn't it be wonderful to go back before Common Core and actually teach children what they're supposed to be knowing instead of stupid stuff that the Common Core wants? So I'm kind of on both sides of this, where I'm seeing a ton of communication from the district going out and a ton of surveys. But like I said, I don't have a parent, a child, so I don't know what kind of communication the principals are getting. There goes my fire alarm because my child is cooking right now. God. But I just want everybody, parents and everybody, like, chill a little bit. Everybody's doing the best that they can. The parents are doing the best, working and making sure all their kids are getting whatever they need. The districts are doing the best they can. Nobody had 2020 for this. We're all new to this, doing the best we can. Patience. That's all I'm saying. That's my comment.
Thank you, Lori. Anybody else have any comments? No. All right, so thank you. I think that wraps up our meeting. Can I get a motion to close the meeting, please?
So moved.
And
So
Lori
moved.
seconds. Okay, Bill seconds. Well, somebody seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much for attending. Our next meeting will be in 2 weeks, and I don't have my calendar in front of me, so I can't tell you what the date is. But there will be postings for when it is up. If someone wants to tell me the date of the next meeting, then I'll announce it now.
23rd.
Thank you. We'll be on the 23rd of September. And at that meeting, Joe will give us an update on how his PTA meeting went. Hopefully, we will be able to discuss a Q&A that we had with the high school and some resolution of the block schedule questions. And there will be some more answers on the FAQ for parents who want to be in the know. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Aye.
Thank you.